that there was nothing wrong with transferring the funds from the office of the president to the vice president's office because they were drawn from contingency funds.
It was requested by the OVP to DBM. DBM evaluated it and requested the approval of the office of the president. And the president himself approved to release from the special purpose funds. The special purpose funds, that includes the contingency fund, which is the source of those 125 million plus something like another amount for other expenditures.
Ungab further explained that the funds were not an augmentation for the vice president's office, but rather a new appropriation for contingency funds. He also emphasized that there was no need to itemize how the funds would be used.
Pag-augmentation, kailangan mo, kung galing ka sa savings, there must be an existing budgetary item. This is not coming from savings. This is not coming from augmentation. This is coming from contingency fund, which allows new and existing appropriations.
Members of the opposition in Congress have been questioning the use of the OVP's confidential funds. However, the Makabayan Bloc admitted that they had no concrete evidence to support their alleged misuse of the Vice President's office funds. For Ganamul of Philippines, MJ Mondeja, SMNI News.
It is appropriated to buy rice from local farmers first before considering importing rice as a solution, as said by Senator Amy Marcos. She also insisted that many provinces in the country are still selling rice at 25 pesos per kilo. Jason Frederico has the details.
Senator Amy Marcos believes it is better to buy rice from local farmers right now. She said many of the provinces in the country sell rice at 25 pesos per kilo. Senator Marcos said the National Food Authority should buy them first before considering importation as a solution.
Simutin muna, ang dami-dami pa sa Mindanao, ang dami pa sa Nueva Ecija, yung mga biofertilizer. Ang baba ng presyo ng ani nila, nasa 25 pesos. Ba't hindi muna yan ang bilhin? Ang pagkaalam ko, ang NFA, 75%, 3/4 of their budget remains intact. Hindi pa sila namimili. Kailan pa sila namimili?
Senator Marcos said the local farmers will be at a disadvantage if the government chooses to import rice. The senator explained that if imported rice comes in, the price of local rice will be lower and it will affect local farmers.
At ang pinangangambahan na naman ng mga magsasaka sa amin, baka naman pagpasok ng imported, sasapawan na naman yung bagong ani kasi mag-aanihan na sa bukid sa loob ng isang linggo. By the 3rd week of September, all through October, that's the major first harvest.
Senator Marcos added that the importation is not sustainable and neither are subsidies.
Importation is not sustainable, neither are subsidies. But at the end of the day, we have to invest in our countryside finally so that we can become competitive and achieve food security.
Authorities strictly enforce President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s Executive Order 39, in which the price ceiling is implemented at 41 pesos per kilo for regular milled rice and 45 pesos per kilo for well-milled rice. The government has already distributed financial assistance to the affected rice retailers. For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SMNI News.
Top diplomats of Russia and China met in Moscow amid talks that Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to Beijing to meet with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. Kai Villan reports.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that as major countries in the world and also as permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and Russia bear important responsibilities for maintaining global strategic stability and promoting world development and progress. Wang, also a member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee, made a statement in a meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. The Chinese top diplomat said both China and Russia uphold an independent foreign policy, and their cooperation is not targeted at any third party, nor will it be influenced or manipulated by any third party. In the face of rising unilateralism, hegemonism, and black confrontation, Wang said China and Russia should conform to the trend of the times, shoulder responsibility as major countries. fulfill their due international obligations, strengthen strategic cooperation, and adhere to true multilateralism. He said that both sides need to promote multipolarity in the world and advance the development of global governance equally. Meanwhile, Lavrov shared his view on the situation in Ukraine and highly commented on China's position paper for taking into account the security concerns of all parties, which he said is conducive to addressing the root causes of the conflict. Russia will also continue to be open to negotiations and dialogues. The two sides also exchanged views on other international and regional issues of common concern. The meeting comes following the talks between Wang Yi and U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in Malta regarding U.S. and China, the Asia-Pacific region, and other issues. The sad talks also come as Putin is set to travel to China in October at the invitation of Xi. Reporting for Newsline World, Vigan, SMNI News.
The United States and Iran have officially swapped prisoners, held on each side. Washington also released $6 billion in frozen Iranian funds as part of a rare deal between the arch-enemies. Melchizedek Cadiz has the details.
In a rare diplomatic move, 5 Americans detained in Iran finally returned to the United States as part of the prisoner exchange deal between the two countries. The United States has also released 5 Iranian detainees, with 2 finally returning to Iran, while the other 3 prefer to stay in another country. The prisoner exchange occurred after Washington transferred $6 billion in frozen Iranian oil money from South Korea to Qatar, with the oil-rich Gulf state mediating the deal. The prisoners could only board the plane after Washington completed the cash transfer. The Biden administration warned that the released Iranian funds will only be used for humanitarian purposes and will freeze them again if diverted. Responding to Washington's threat, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi insisted that the money belongs to the Iranian people and the Iranian government, so the Islamic Republic can decide what to do with the released funds. Reporting this has been Melchizedek Cadiz, SMNI News, Kuwait.
Brazilian President Lula da Silva is set to meet with his Ukrainian counterpart for the first time after months of diplomatic and forth between the two leaders. Mike Dennis Oliveira will tell us more about this live. Mike?
Good evening, Fred. The President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva will meet with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in New York on Wednesday, while they are attending the UN General Assembly as announced by the Brazilian presidency.
Lula, who had advocated the creation of a group of countries to mediate an end to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, will hold its first in-person bilateral meeting with Zelensky while in New York. To recall, both leaders had a video conversation last March, but they had a strikingly different public summaries regarding what they discussed. Zelensky underscored the territorial integrity of Ukraine, but Lula did not emphasize such matter in his discussion on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Both leaders also failed to meet during the G7 summit in Japan. Lula expressed disappointment at that time and said that Zelensky was late. The Ukrainian president, on the other hand, played down the fact that he did not meet his Brazilian counterpart. Lula has tried to play the role of a peacemaker in the Russia-Ukraine conflict since taking office on January 1. While acknowledging that Ukraine has the right to defend itself, Lula has refused to join sanctions against Russia or send military aid to Ukraine. He instead sought to mediate a diplomatic solution, although he criticized Western support for Ukraine as a way of prolonging the conflict.
It is highly expected, Fred, that the Russia-Ukraine conflict will be discussed in the UN General Assembly, although some other countries are also expected to pitch their concerns regarding poverty, inequality, the increasing food prices, and the worsening climate emergency. Back to you, Fred.
Thank you, Mikey, for that live report. A South Asian leader criticized the nuclear power submarine deal between Australia and Britain and the United States, stating that it was a framework designed to target China. Anicia de Guzman tell us more.
A a strategic misstep. This was how Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe described AUKUS, an acronym for the Trilateral Security Pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Speaking on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, the Sri Lankan president claimed that AUKUS is a military alliance move against one country, no other than China. The three-way strategic defense alliance between Australia, the UK, and the US seeks to provide nuclear-powered submarines for the Royal Australian Navy. The deal also involves cooperation on advanced cyber mechanisms, artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, undersea capabilities, electronic warfare, and information sharing. The Sri Lankan leader said that the Sino-US rivalry, which originated from the Western Pacific, has now spread to both the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific. At the same time, the question remains on how the two dominant countries will divide the region of influence in Asia. He added that Sri Lanka wants to refrain from participating in the growing tensions between Washington and Beijing, and that his country would like to maintain good relations with both economic powerhouses. Meanwhile, China has accused the United Kingdom and the United States of attempting to transfer tons of weapons-grade, highly enriched uranium to their military ally, Australia, a non-nuclear weapon state. China previously warned that the AUKUS allies are embarking on a path of error and danger with their nuclear submarines agreement, adding it could trigger an arms race while completely ignoring the concerns of international community. Di siya Nanisa de Guzman, arangan siya kontat mahanakon, SMNI News, Pratethay, Sawadika.
An American jet reportedly went missing after the pilot ejected over South Carolina. And in the latest update of the events, U.S. military officials have found the debris of the said jet, although the rest of it is still missing. Verhil Parba files this report.
On Sunday, an F-35 military jet went missing after the pilot ejected from the cockpit and parachuted to safety in North Charleston neighborhood. The pilot, whose name was not disclosed, was taken to a local medical center and is in stable condition. The F-35B Lightning II jet, which cost $100 million, was left in autopilot mode when the pilot ejected. Reports citing U.S. authorities said that the plane may have been airborne for some time, and this complicated the search for its whereabouts. The search for the jet drew great international interest, particularly after Joint Base Charleston posted a request on social media asking for any information that might aid in the search of the missing jet. The incident also gained criticism, with Representative Nancy Mace in a social media post asking how it was possible to lose an F-35. The Marine Corps announced earlier Monday that it was pausing aviation operations for 2 days following the F-35's crash. Lockheed Martin boasts the F-35 series as the most advanced fighter jet in the world and also the most lethal, stealthy, and survivable aircraft. The debris was then discovered Monday evening about 2 hours northeast of Joint Base Charleston, an air base in North Charleston. U.S. officials did not provide further details. When asked whether F-35 jet had crashed, Jeremy Huggins, a spokesman at Joint Base Charleston, said that he was unable to elaborate, but he promised that more information will be forthcoming. This is the third costly accident that occurred in recent weeks. On August 3, U.S. Marines were killed in a crash of a V-22B Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft during a training exercise in Australia. On August 26, a Marine Corps pilot was killed when his combat jet crashed near a base in San Diego during a training flight. Reporting, this has been Verhil Parba, SMNI News.
Russian President Putin declared that the country has effectively endured and rebounded from the extensive sanctions pressure, marking a successful recovery from unprecedented. Leon, tell us more.
President Vladimir Putin recently declared that Russia's economy has successfully bounced back, reaching the same gross domestic product or GDP level as before the Ukraine-related sanctions were imposed. Speaking at a government meeting discussing the draft federal budget for 2024 to 2026, Putin emphasized that Russia had overcome tough challenges. Putin said, quote, "In simple terms, Russia's economy is back to where it was before sanctions hit us. We've managed to withstand the pressure from sanctions and challenges from the West." End of quote. He also revealed that Russia's GDP has returned to its 2021 level. Putin stressed how important it is to maintain stable growth. When talking about economic growth, Putin mentioned that while experts initially predicted a 1.2% growth in GDP for April, Russia has already exceeded that target. He even projected that by the end of the year, Russia's GDP growth might reach 2.5% or possibly 2.8%. Putin also stressed the concern of rising prices or inflation. He explained that one of the main reasons for this was the weakening of the Russian ruble. He then urged his country's financial authorities to figure out why the ruble was weakening and to take action quickly to address it. Finally, Putin mentioned that the government had prepared a draft state budget for the next 3 years. Although there were still some disagreements on certain aspects, he called on the government to finalize the budget as soon as possible. Reporting, this has been Angie De Leon, SMNI News.
More news when Newsline World returns. Back in the news, former U.S. President Donald Trump will skip the Second Republic debate. Instead, he will address auto workers in Detroit amid an ongoing labor dispute on September 27. He plans to criticize President Biden's electric vehicle policies and court support from blue-collar union members amid an ongoing labor dispute in the auto industry. This move indicates Trump's focus on the general election, aiming to win back working-class voters who supported Biden in 2020. The strike by the United Auto Workers Union poses a political challenge for Biden, and Trump seeks to position himself as a champion of auto workers in key swing states for the 2024 election. Tensions between India and Canada are rising following the Canadian government's accusations that the Indian government is allegedly involved in the killing of a Khalistan separatist movement. And in a retaliatory move, India expelled a top Canadian diplomat just hours after Canada expelled New Delhi's. Jane Condita filed this report.
On Tuesday morning, the Canadian High Commissioner was summoned by the Indian Foreign Ministry and was informed about their decision to expel a senior Canadian diplomat based in India. According to the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, the Canadian diplomat has been asked to leave India within the next 5 days, and this decision reflected its growing concern at the interference of Canadian diplomats in their internal affairs and their involvement in anti-India activities. The Indian government's move comes after the Canadian government expelled Pavan Kumar Rai, the head of the Research and Analysis Wing, India's external intelligence agency. This escalated the tensions between both countries, but the person at the heart of the diplomatic dispute is Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was murdered last June. Nijjar was a leader of the Khalistan separatist movement and a Canadian citizen. He is the chief of Khalistan Tiger Force, or KTF, a banned terrorist outfit said to be involved in several terror activities in India. Nijjar had moved to Canada in the late 1990s, and in July 2020, India declared him a terrorist, following his support for the Sikh homeland in the form of an independent Khalistan state. Indian security agencies said he was actively involved in recruiting and training people for KTF and was a part of the separatist outfit Sikhs for Justice, or SFJ, which held a Khalistan referendum on September 10. In 2022, India's counter-terrorism body, the National Investigation Agency, offered a reward of 1 million rupees for information that will lead to Nijjar's apprehension or arrest. This made Nijjar one of the most wanted terrorists in the said country. And on June 18 of this year, 2 unidentified gunmen shot Nijjar dead outside a Gurdwara in Surrey, British Columbia. It was Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau who delivered an emergency address to lawmakers in Parliament on Monday to inform that the security agencies have been pursuing what he said were credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the Government of India and the killing of Nijjar in Canada.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the Government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Canada is a rule of law country. The protection of our citizens and defense of our sovereignty are fundamental.
Trudeau said he had raised the issue of the murder directly with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines of the G20 summit in New Delhi and urged his government to cooperate with Canada to resolve the matter. Modi, meanwhile, conveyed strong concern to Trudeau over the recent protests in Canada by Sikhs. Following Trudeau's announcement, Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly announced the decision to expel the Indian official. Meanwhile, India strongly rejected Canada's claims, calling it absurd. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs said, and quotes, "Such unsubstantiated allegations seek to shift the focus from Khalistani terrorists and extremists who have been provided shelter in Canada and continue to threaten India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The inaction of the Canadian government on this matter has been a long-standing and continuing concern." It added that the space given in Canada to acts of violence, including murder, human trafficking, and organized crime, is not new, and that India rejects any attempts to connect with such activities. Canada has the largest Sikh population outside the Punjab state of India. According to the 2021 census, about 770,000 Canadians reported Sikhism as their religion. Meanwhile, Khalistan is a separatist movement which began in the early 1980s. It seeks an independent and theocratic Sikh state in Punjab and other northern parts of India. Reporting, this has been Jane Cunita, SMNI News.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. distributed the confiscated and smuggled rice to low-income families in Zamboanga. Joris Bonifacio files this report.
On Tuesday, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. handed out 1,500 bags of rice to the beneficiaries of the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program or 4Ps in Zamboanga City, as well as in Tungawa and Zamboanga Sibugay. This is amid PBBM's visit to the National Food Authority or NFA Region 9 warehouse in Zamboanga City on Tuesday, September 19, 2023.
Ako'y nag-inspeksyon lamang at makita talaga kung ano ba ang nangyayari, hindi lamang doon sa NCR, sa Manila, kung hindi pati na rito, sa kabilang dulo naman ng Pilipinas, dito sa Zamboanga, para naman makita natin na lahat ng ating mga kababayan ay nasusuportahan at na, kung sino man ang nangangailangan ng tulong ay nabibigyan ng tulong.
In his speech, President Marcos said that the rice he distributed was part of 42,180 smuggled bags of rice worth 42 million pesos. It was confiscated by the Bureau of Customs, Port of Zamboanga, after the agency raided the warehouse in Barangay San Jose, Gusu, Zamboanga City on September 15 this year. PBBM praised the BOC for successfully seizing more than 42,000 sacks of rice. Meanwhile, President Marcos assured that the government and his administration are working tirelessly to end smuggling, which has affected the country's agricultural sector. The president said he had instructed the Bureau of Customs to further intensify the campaign against smugglers to put an end to their illegal operations. The chief executive maintained that the government followed due process in confiscating smuggled items by giving the respondents a 15-day notice to hit their side.
Ginawa namin ang proseso na ganito ay sasabihin doon sa nagpasok, magpaliwanag kayo, saan galing yan? Saan kayo nagbayad ng taripa? Saan kayo nagbayad ng tax ninyo? Saan kayo lahat ng mga pangangailangan dokumento? Natapos na po ang 15 days, hindi po sila makasagot. Kaya kinuha na namin, kinuha na ng gobyerno, kinuha na ng customs at ginawang donation sa DSWD at gagawing donation ng DSWD at ng gobyerno sa inyo.
DSWD Secretary Rex Gatchalian was also present at the rice distribution in Zamboanga, along with officials from the Department of Agriculture, NFA, and BOC. President Marcos Jr. also led the distribution of various assistance from the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources or BFAR, and Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE to the intended beneficiaries in Zamboanga. For God in my beloved Philippines, I am Joris Bonifacio, SMNI News.
A homegrown motorcycle ride-hailing company has committed to support the Philippine government's program to boost employment. MJ Modehar tells us more.
The cooperation between the government and the private sector in creating jobs for Filipinos continues. And one of the key players in this effort is the homegrown motorcycle ride-hailing company, AUKUS. George Royeca, CEO of AUKUS, said that the company is dedicated to providing more jobs for Filipinos. But how? They plan to turn many Filipinos into nanopreneurs. This is one of the initiatives pushed by President Bongbong Marcos, Royeca said during the recent ASEAN Summit in Indonesia.
Isa pong agenda dun sa ASEAN Summit is yung tinatawag po ng presidente na nanopreneur. At ito po ay mas maliit sa micro-entrepreneur at I think represents a large number of our workforce.
AUKUS riders qualify as nanopreneurs because they use motorcycles for their livelihood. This aligns with President BBM's goal of providing decent jobs jobs for many Filipinos through the Motorcycle Micro-Business Program. And AUKUS is committed to collaborating with the government on this initiative.
We hope to provide or create an ecosystem that legitimizes ang tinatawag nating nanopreneur or informal sector para talagang mabigyan, ma-empower po natin a large portion of our population.
The company aims to convert 18 million motorcycle owners into nanopreneurs and improve earnings from motorcycle taxis. Based on latest data, AUKUS already has over 28,000 partner riders in various parts in the Philippines, including Metro Manila, Greater Manila Area, Metro Cebu, and Cagayan de Oro. The company plans to continue its collaboration with the government, especially in the full legalization of motorcycle taxis in the Philippines. They're actively contributing inputs to the forthcoming legislation.
Kaya po natin magbigay ng trabaho sa milyong-milyong Pilipino dito sa industriya na to at lahat ng pong hard work na ginagawa ng ating mambabatas, ng executive branch, ng DOTR at LTFRB, very promising po na finally makakamit na po sa mga probinsya lahat ng mga habal-habal na maging lehitimo at magkaroon po sila ng trabaho.
Motorcycle taxi operations in the Philippines are still in a pilot program. For Ganamabal of Philippines, I'm Jay Mondihar, SMNI News.
Australia's transition towards renewable energy sources has attracted foreign investors who want to take part on this ambitious milestone. Sasha Hasa reports.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese shared his ambition for the country to be a future renewable energy superpower, as foreign investors see the potential behind this transition. Albanese outlined his government's plan to promote and accelerate Australia's transition towards renewable energy, along with plans to make it a future superpower in the said industry. According to the Prime Minister, the global shift towards clean energy is the country's most significant opportunity for growth and prosperity. Albanese also emphasized that solar energy will attract more capital than global oil production for the first time. Meanwhile, the sale of electric cars in Australia soared by 121% in the first half of the year compared to the same period in 2022, while the demand for electric vehicle battery materials will likely grow fivefold at the end of the decade. Moreover, stakeholders who attended the Australian Renewables Industry Summit in Canberra on Monday asked the Albanese government to allocate $100 billion over the next 10 years to boost jobs and reduce carbon emissions. An annual report published recently by the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, the Australian energy market operator, showed that renewable energy sources remain the cheapest, most reliable energy system and most cost-effective option for meeting Australia's electricity needs. Australia has pledged to an 82% national renewable electricity target by 2030 and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 205 million tonnes in the same year. Reporting from Sydney, this has been Sasha Hasa, SMNI News, Australia.
A video of a brown bear casually strolling down the road while trailing a massive 30-foot tapeworm behind it goes viral. Trisha Molina has the story.
A documentary wildlife photographer had a startling encounter with a brown bear cub that appeared to have long white ropes attached to its rear end. But upon taking a closer look and reading the caption, viewers were horrified to find out that the long white strings were a bunch of tapeworms wriggling out of the carnivorous mammal's body. The host bear can accumulate the parasite, the broadfish tapeworm, from eating salmon. A tapeworm inside a bear can reach up to 9 meters or 30 feet. The video garnered over 20 million views within a few hours after posting. The unsettling video triggered a sense of shock and horror amongst viewers as they witnessed firsthand the reality of the life cycle of parasites and the actual condition of animals surviving in the wild. Another surprising fact is that humans can also become hosts for these parasites, wherein a 67-year-old Thai man excreted an 18-meter-long beef tapeworm, known scientifically as Tinea saginata, after getting dewormed in 2021. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Trisha Molina, SMNI News.
A UAE astronaut who had embarked on a historic space mission received a hero's welcome upon returning to his country. Gratiro Amori, tell us more.
The rulers of Abu Dhabi and Dubai warmly welcomed Emirati astronaut Sultan Al Neyadi after completing his 6-month mission to the International Space Station, or ISS. Al Neyadi handed down the Emirati flag to UAE President His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, which made its way to space for the second time. The Emirati astronaut told Sheikh Mohammed of his vision that the UAE flag will also make its way to the moon and Mars, as he thanked the UAE leadership for making his childhood dream come true. The father of 6 received warm greetings from his family and expressed his happiness for the grand welcome he had received. Al Neyadi and his crew 6 astronauts arrived on the ISS on March 3 and returned to Earth on September 4. The UAE also shared its ambitious mission to explore the asteroid belt and fly by Venus between 2028 to 2031. Reporting from Dubai, this has been Gratero Omori, SMNI News, United Arab Emirates.
The government of Thailand is planning to lure more Indian tourists into the country after granting visa waivers for Chinese travelers. Chat Mugon, Pisamay Gozon reports.
Thailand's new Prime Minister Sethar Thavisin hopes to attract more visitors from India, the world's most populated country, just in time for the upcoming high tourism season in Thailand. Sethar announced the initiative as Thai officials plan to issue visa waivers for travelers from China and Kazakhstan starting next week. The visa waiver program will bring a potential profit of 35 billion baht from Chinese tourists alone. Sethar looks forward to traveling to India and meeting his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi to discuss increasing flight frequency between the two countries this year. He admitted there aren't enough incoming flights. So far, Thailand has welcomed 18.5 million foreigners, with as many as 28 million expected by the end of the year. Reviving Thailand's tourism industry is one of Sethar's campaign promises to relieve the country's post-pandemic economic problems. Industry leaders urged the new government to take action after months of political deadlock hindered the country from achieving economic reforms. รายงานจากราชบุรีนายชัดมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMN News ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
What was once a poor city has now emerged as a popular tourist destination in China, with hundreds of people flocking the area to discover the ancient city of Kashi. Jade Calabroso traveled all the way to this old city, located in the northwest China, Xinjiang region.
The old city of Kashgar, also known as the ancient city of Kashi, is found in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region of China. A home to 126,000 people, Kashi lies at the heart of the city with a size of 4.25 square kilometers. This is where we witnessed their culture and saw a glimpse of the life of the residents living here. In the past, the city lacked a proper sewage system and struggled with waste collecting and disposing waste from homes, buildings, and other infrastructures. Residents used to struggle when it rains, as it quickly floods the city. The city also had no proper toilet facilities, and water pipelines were connected along the walls. Piles of garbage used to scatter the streets, and many houses were damaged due to past earthquakes. This is because Kashi is located in an earthquake-active belt. But over time, this has become the new city of Kashi. The ancient city emerged as a popular tourist destination in Xinjiang, China, after the central government carried out major renovations from 2008 to 2015. They constructed buildings and houses of local residents using bricks, wood, and plaster. Newly renovated residential homes now have 3 floors. They use the first floor for business-related activities. On the second floor, you'll find their bathrooms. And on the third floor, you'll find their living rooms and dining area. The renovation project, undertaken by the Chinese government, generated jobs for many residents.
好的，当然我们这个古城景区这个打造成5A级景区以前，我们这个古城里面也有这种做生意的地方，但是因为没有游客，主要是我们看是本地人要需要一些日常用品的话，到这里来购买的。 但是这个古城创建5A 以后，到这里的游客也多了，然后这边的手工艺人的那些生意也做得越来越好了，所有人的这个经济条件也有了很大的一个提升。
After these renovations which made integrate the residential areas with these tourist attractions, more and more tourists coming to the old cities to experience the cultures, to learn about culture, and the lives of the local residents become better and better.
Within the ancient city of Kashi, you can find various handmade products and food made by the residents.
Dito sa loob ng Old City ng Kashi, makikita po ninyo mga ka-partners, dagsa ng mga turista ang lugar. At bukod nga sa mga residential area, ay tampok dito yung kanilang 5 bazaar.
The Flower Pot Bazaar showcases various shapes, sizes, and designs. The Cantonman Bazaar is where you can find different agricultural tools like this traditional but unique tea set with intricate design. There's also a bazaar for wood crafting, which features traditional Chinese musical instruments like the dutar and drum. The 4th bazaar offers herbal tea. Drinking tea is part of Chinese culture, and many Chinese people and experts claim it helps cure various ailments such as toothache, heart issues, blood problems, and stomach problems, among others. The 5th is a bazaar for flower hats, commonly worn by women during festivals, weddings, and other special occasions. Because of its rich culture and many beautiful places, it's no wonder that the ancient city of Kashi has been designated a 5-star tourist destination in China. It showcases the colorful traditions of Xinjiang Uyghur and symbolizes the ancient way of life and the peaceful situation experienced by the city's residents today. Another popular tourist attraction is the Idka Mosque, located just a few kilometers from the ancient city of Kashi. Built in 1442, it is one of the oldest mosques in China with a land area of 1.68 hectares and can accommodate up to 5,000 worshippers. It's open to all tourists, but it closes when it is time for the worshippers to pray. The entrance fee is 20 yuan, or equivalent to over 150 pesos, while senior tourists aged 65 and above can enter for free.
For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Jade Calabroso, SMNI News, Xinjiang, China.
Over the week, authorities arrested an armed man pretending to be a part of a U.S. presidential candidate, Roberto Kennedy Jr.'s security detail, raising concerns about the need for a secret security service. Kai Vilan tell us more.
An armed man was taken into police custody at a Robert Kennedy Jr. campaign event in Los Angeles. Despite the man's claims, campaign security officials did not recognize him and detained him until police arrived. According to the Los Angeles Police Department, a radio call was generated in the afternoon, reporting a man with a loaded gun in a shoulder holster and a badge stating he was a U.S. Marshal. Police officers arrived shortly after and arrested a man who was identified as Adrian Paul Espuro, 44 years old. He is currently being held in Los Angeles on a $35,000 bail for a felony charge of carrying a concealed weapon. Kennedy's camp issued a statement on Saturday saying that a private security team interacted with Espuro ahead of the speech. Espuro insisted that he was part of Kennedy's security detail and asked to be taken to him immediately. Kennedy Jr. had been asking for Secret Service protection, and following the assassination scare, his campaign manager had written to U.S. President Joe Biden asking for a Secret Service protection for the presidential candidate. The Kennedy campaign is sensitive to assassination and security concerns given the history of the family. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s father, Senator Robert Kennedy Sr., was assassinated in 1968 in Los Angeles shortly after winning the California Democratic presidential primary. His uncle, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated in 1963. That is why the presidential hopeful had been asking for Secret Service protection. However, Kennedy Jr. noted the Biden administration had denied him such security, despite that he had requested it from the Department of Homeland Security and had documented the need for it. The Security Service protection issue was raised again through a letter that his campaign manager sent to President Biden. Kennedy said he was the first presidential candidate in history to be denied protection upon request, although he is still hoping that Biden will allow him Secret Service protection. Reporting for Newsline World, Kay Villan, SMNI News.
For the first time in history, the United States has exceeded its national debt amounting to $33 trillion. Jane Domingo has the details.
The U.S. gross national debt exceeded $33 trillion for the first time on Monday. And this milestone was noted in a daily report of the country's Treasury Department, which detailed the balance sheet of the U.S. It came as the Congress appeared to be faltering in its efforts to fund the American government ahead of the deadline on September 30. The Bank of America said that there's a 50% chance that the U.S. government will face a shutdown if Congress fails to reach a solution by the end of September. To recall, on January 19, the U.S. hit its $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. In June, a debt ceiling bill suspended the effect of the U.S. federal government debt ceiling until 2025, and then the size of the federal government debt quickly exceeded to $32 trillion. To recall, Fitch, one of the three major independent agencies that assess creditworthiness, downgraded the U.S. long-term foreign currency issuer default rating to AA+ from AAA over concerns about the high and growing debt burden of the U.S. government. It also expected that U.S.'s rating will continue to deteriorate over the next 3 years. Reporting, this has been Jean Domingo, SMNI News.
69 News students from the AUKUS College of Ministries complete 1-month military training under SMNI Paaro. Meanwhile, Army officials also acknowledge Pastor Apollo Sikibaloy's effort in nation building. Precious Alvarez has the details.
Pastor Apollo Sikibaloy inspires 69 students from Clase Valiente, the newest batch from the AUKUS College of Ministries, to have completed their month-long military training on September 19, 2023. The leader of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ is also the founder of the 2nd Metro Davao Cignal Battalion, SMNI Philippine Army Affiliated Reservist Unit or PAARU. He said in his talk that his visit to the Philippine Military Academy in Baguio City was instrumental in adopting military training in the Bible College.
I remember once upon a time I was invited in Baguio to the Philippine Military Academy, and their performance there by the late Colonel Gaudencio Boychi Pangilinan. And I saw the orderliness, the cleanliness, the discipline that a future soldier must possess in order to be victorious in every battle that they will encounter physically for the protection of our country. And I remember also how I was so impressed with that kind of discipline that it should also be adapted into the ACQCM students who will enroll in our Bible College, because we are also true soldiers of the Lord Jesus Christ, though not physical but spiritual, and our weapons of warfare are not carnal but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds.
Pastor Apollo also mentioned the noteworthy contribution of the men in uniform for their love of country.
In those days when the CPP, NPA, NDF was in power and about to topple the government, the democratically elected government that we have, it was only the armed forces of the Philippines, particularly the land-based Philippine Army, that held back the night of darkness and destruction that would have engulfed our country. That's why my heart is so close to the military, our armed forces of the Philippines. I hold them very dear in my heart with a generosity and debt of gratitude, although it is their duty to protect us. But we also have a debt of gratitude to them because they were the ones who laid down their lives for the freedom that we enjoy today, especially the freedom of religion or the freedom to worship God in our own way.
It can be remembered that Pastor Apollo was also conferred with the title as World Missionary Chaplain with the rank of Brigadier General, accredited by the Chief of Chaplains by the U.S. Army on July 20, 2022. Meanwhile, the newly installed commander of the 10ID, Brigadier General Alan Hambala, also commended the dedication of the students who endured the rigorous training for a month.
And again, nakita ko kanina yung kind of training they undergone. Sabi nga na General Ikla, mukhang mas mahirap pa man sa training natin doon, sir. Pati yung pagkain na nakahiga, at hindi mo nakikita yung pagkain, at may sili pa. No? Hindi pala basta-bastang training yung nadaanan nyo. With that, I just want to congratulate you again for your attitude, for your perseverance of handling that very hard military training.
David Axel Menaday received Leadership Award for being the Corps Commander of Class Valiente.
To my fellow classmates of Class Valiente, let's keep fighting and let's make the sun proud. Let's make the king proud. There's no word other to describe how we feel. We really feel thankful for the privilege, for the blessings, for everything He has invested upon us. Thank you, Pastor.
Meanwhile, the Army officials also acknowledged Pastor Apollo and the SMNI's efforts in nation building.
Napakalaki ang tulong na binigay ng SMNI at saka yung kingdom ni Pastor Kilbuloy. Ako mismo witnessed to how SMNI supported the anti-insurgency effort of the armed forces of the Philippines. In fact, dahil sa tulong ng SMNI, sa tulong ni Pastor Kibuloy, mas napabilis natin natapos yung insurgency dito sa Davao City. At in fact, sa lahat ng provinces at the national level, tuloy-tuloy ang tulong ng SMNI sa pag-inform ng public kung ano dapat ang ating gagawin to effectively address the insurgency problem in the country.
Napakalaki nung naitulong ng SMNI na maipaabot sa ating mga kababayan kung ano yung hirap, kung ano yung ginagawa ng yung sundalo, no? Para ma-achieve natin yung insurgency free. Ang nangyari is, you are one of those institution na nag-bridge ng gap between us and the public.
While these students are trained to become future ministers, they are also trained to become patriotic citizens of the country and become catalysts of change. For the love of God and my country, this is Precious Alvarez, SMNI News.
And before we end, may you be inspired with a message of the appointed Son of God. Great leaders don't tell you what to do. They show you how it's done. And for our Christmas countdown, it's 96 days to go before Christmas.
And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit smnichannel.on or follow us in official social media accounts on Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. For God and Country, I'm Frederico Velloso.
For God and Country, I'm Deivid Lira. Thank you for watching Newsline World, and thank you to our beloved pastor, Pastor Apollo Sikibaloy for this opportunity to be part of this program.
May you continue to listen on SMNI as it delivers nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news, because SMNI is your source of credible news.